Devon Scott had walked these grounds before, but it had never felt like this. He stood at the edge of the long gravel driveway of Magnolia Grove Plantation, staring up at the towering white columns and wide veranda, just as he had when he was a kid. Back then, his grandmother would tug on his hand and pull him away before he could get too close. "Ain't nothing up there but ghosts," she used to say. He hadn't understood it then. He thought she meant something spooky, like in the movies. He didn't realize until much later that the ghosts she spoke of weren't the kind that rattled chains or floated through walls. They were the kind that lived in memory, in bloodlines, in whispers passed down at kitchen tables, in the silence that hung heavy when someone asked too many questions. Devon took a deep breath and checked the time on his phone. 9:45 a.m. His tour started in 15 minutes, his first one. The manager, Walt Freeman, had already texted him twice this morning. "Make sure you stick to the script today," one message read. "Big group coming. Don't scare 'em off," said the other. Devon had heard all the warnings. Even in the job interview, Walt had made it clear. "We don't do politics here, son. We do hospitality. We sell the Southern experience, not a guilt trip." Devon had nodded, knowing full well he wasn't here to sell any mint julep fairy tales. He wasn't here to entertain rich tourists looking for a feel-good version of history. He was here for them, for the people whose voices had been stolen, for the names that had been erased, for the ancestors who had stood on the very auction block that still rested beneath the giant oak tree just 20 yards away. He started walking up the long path toward the visitor center, the gravel crunching under his shoes. He could hear faint music playing from hidden speakers. Old jazz standards turned low enough to feel like background noise. As he walked past the souvenir stand, he glanced at the items for sale. Magnolia-themed mugs, postcards showing white couples in old-timey clothes, and cookbooks titled Tastes of the Old South. He wondered if they sold anything that told the real story. He doubted it. He reached the porch and paused, running his fingers along the freshly painted railing. The wood felt smooth, polished. Everything had been redone recently to impress visitors, no doubt. The house gleamed like it was frozen in time, untouched by the centuries of blood and sweat that had built it. But the stones beneath the oak tree had never been replaced. They didn't dare touch those. The auction block was the only honest thing left on this land. Inside the visitor center, Walt stood by the front desk, clipboard in hand. He looked up as Devon entered, offering a tight, businesslike smile. "Morning, Devon," he said, nodding toward the window, where a group of tourists was already gathering. "Looks like ye got a good crowd today." Devon forced a polite smile in return. "Morning, Walt." Walt walked over, lowering his voice. "Remember what I said. Stick to the highlights. Architecture, gardens, Colonel Rutledge's contributions to agriculture. Keep it light. These folks paid to have a good time, not a lecture." Devon nodded again but said nothing. He knew this script by heart. He just had no intention of following it. He grabbed the microphone headset from the counter and stepped outside. About 20 people had gathered near the steps of the Plantation house. Most of them wore wide-brimmed hats, sunglasses, and touristy grins. A few clutched paper brochures. Some were already posing for selfies with the grand house as their backdrop. A woman in a floral sun hat turned toward him, her voice chirpy. "You the guide?" "Yes, ma'am. Name's Devon Scott. Welcome to Magnolia Grove." A few people nodded, gathering closer. Devon scanned the crowd. There were families with kids, older couples, a group of college students, and one older black man standing quietly near the back, his hands clasped behind him. Devon adjusted the headset and cleared his throat. We'll be starting our tour here at the main house, built in 1832 by Colonel Samuel Rutledge. He paused, feeling the words sticking in his throat. He glanced toward the oak tree in the distance. The auction block stood in its shadow, a dark stone against the bright green grass. He took a breath and made his choice. That's built on the labor of over 200 enslaved men, women, and children. A ripple moved through the group. A few people exchanged glances. One woman shifted uncomfortably, adjusting her sunglasses. Walt stood near the edge of the porch, arms crossed, watching closely. Devon pressed on. Before we go inside, I'd like to start our tour at the most important site on this property. Right over there, beneath that oak tree. He turned and began walking toward the auction block. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the group began to follow. Devon stood beside the old stone platform, his voice steady now. This is the auction block. It was here that human beings were bought and sold like cattle, mothers separated from their children, husbands torn from their wives, names erased, families broken. The tourists fell silent. Some of the people sold here were born on this land. Others were shipped in from markets in New Orleans. They stood on this very stone while strangers inspected their bodies, checked their teeth, and placed beads on their lives. Devon let the words hang in the air. He could feel the weight of them settling over the group. A woman in the front dabbed her eyes with a tissue. A man near the back lowered his camera. The older black man stood still, his face unreadable. Devon continued, telling them about the whippings in the fields, the stolen languages, the forced labor that made the plantation rich. He spoke of the children who had never known freedom, who had played in the dirt while their parents feared they might be sold the next day. He spoke as if the ground itself had been waiting for someone to tell the truth. When the tour ended, no one clapped. No one laughed. They stood quietly, some looking down at their feet. Others staring at the auction block as if seeing it for the first time. A few visitors approached Devon quietly. "Thank you," one woman whispered. "My God, I had no idea," another said, her voice trembling. The older black man walked up last. He placed a hand on Devon's shoulder and leaned in close. "Keep telling it, son," he whispered. "Don't let 'em bury it again." Devon nodded, swallowing hard. As the group made their way back toward the main house, Walt approached, his jaw tight. "My office, now!" Devon followed him inside, closing the door behind them. Walt turned, his face red with anger. "What the hell was that?" Devon stood tall. "The truth." Walt shook his head. "We don't do the truth here, Devon. We do hospitality. We do tourism." "So you want me to lie?" "I want you to sell the damn experience. People don't pay good money to feel guilty. They come here for the gardens, the architecture, the charm." Devon crossed his arms. "They come here for the story. I'm just giving them the real one." Walt pointed a finger at him. "One more stunt like that, and you're gone. You hear me? Fired." Devon didn't flinch. "Loud and clear." Walt glared at him for a moment longer, then turned and slammed the door behind him as he left. Devon stood alone in the office, staring out the window at the oak tree in the distance. They could fire him tomorrow, but they'd never make him lie. Devon knew the knock before it even landed. It came the next morning, sharp and heavy, like someone trying to remind the door it didn't belong to them. He opened it to find Walt Freeman standing there, coffee in hand, lips pressed into what might have passed for a polite smile if Devon hadn't seen the man's face just yesterday. twisted in anger. "Mornin'," Walt said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Devon leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "Didn't know we had a meeting." Walt held up a folder, crisp and white. "We do now." He set the coffee on the small table by the window and placed the folder next to it. "What's that?" Devon asked, already knowing. "Your script." Devon didn't move, didn't touch it. Walt sighed, sitting down. "Look, I know you're trying to do whatever it is ye think you're doing. But this place has rules. And one of those rules is we tell the story our guests pay to hear, not the one that makes them cancel their memberships." Devon raised an eyebrow. "Memberships?" Walt nodded. "Corporate partners, family foundations, donors. Ye know how many of them are from old Southern families? You know how much money they pour into this place to keep it looking like that postcard out there?" Devon said nothing. Walt leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We got bills to pay, gardens to maintain, staff to keep on payroll. You think people are gonna write checks if their grandkids come home talking about whippings and auction blocks?" Devon glanced at the folder again. "So what exactly does your script say?" Walt opened the folder and began to read. "Welcome to Magnolia Grove, a symbol of Southern elegance and tradition." He paused, giving Devon a look. "We celebrate the craftsmanship of antebellum architecture, the beauty of our Magnolia gardens, and the enduring legacy of Southern hospitality." Devon let out a humorless laugh. "Legacy, huh?" Walt stood up, closing the folder with a soft fap. "I'm serious, Devon. Stick to the script. Ye got a 2 o'clock tour today. If I hear one word about auctions or whippings, you're done." Devon met his stare. "What happens when they ask?" Walt shrugged. "Redirect. Tell them about the chandeliers or something." He walked to the door, hand on the knob. "You're a good speaker, Devon. Hell, Devon waited until Walt was gone before he picked up the folder. He flipped through the pages, reading lines that dripped with honeyed lies. Stories about candlelit dinners, garden parties, and the charm of a simpler time. He could almost hear his grandmother laughing in disbelief. He slammed the folder shut and tossed it onto the table. He wasn't chasing ghosts. He was fighting for the living. The 2 o'clock tour gathered on the steps as the sun pressed down heavy and bright. Devon stood before them, headset crackling softly in his ear. Walt watched from the porch again, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Devon took a slow breath and began the way the script said he should. "Welcome to Magnolia Grove, a symbol of Southern elegance and tradition." The words felt like ash on his tongue. "We celebrate the craftsmanship of antebellum architecture, the beauty of our Magnolia gardens." He glanced toward the oak tree. "And the enduring legacy of—" He paused, gripping the microphone. Someone in the crowd raised a hand, a teenage girl with dark, curly hair. "Excuse me," she asked, "is that the place where they used to sell people?" The group turned to look at her, then at Devon. Devon felt every muscle in his body tense. Walt shifted, clearly waiting for him to redirect. Devon swallowed. "Yes," he said simply, "that's exactly what it is." A couple in the front exchanged looks. An older man cleared his throat uncomfortably. But the girl kept her eyes on Devon, waiting. He lowered the microphone and gestured for them to follow. Once again, he led them to the auction block. And once again, he told them the truth. But this time, he went deeper. He told them about the names, the records he had found, the lists of people sold in lots with nothing but numbers and prices next to them. He told him about the runaway notices printed in old newspapers, describing scars on backs, broken teeth, missing fingers. He told him about the children born into chains, never knowing what it felt like to own their own bodies. He told them about the legacy that still lived in every brick, every tree, every silent room in that big white house. The girl's mother reached for her daughter's hand. A man near the back lowered his head. Someone whispered, "My God." When the tour ended, no one asked about the chandeliers. No one asked about the garden parties. They asked for the records. They asked for the names. They asked why they had never heard this story before. Devon stayed long after the official tour had ended, answering every question he could. When he finally turned to leave, the girl with the curly hair stopped him. "Thank ye," she whispered. "My great-grandmother was born in Louisiana. We never knew where." Devon nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Ye might want to check the archives in town. I can help ye." She smiled softly. "I'd like that." Walt didn't wait this time. He met Devon the moment the crowd dispersed. "What the hell did I tell you?" Walt snapped, grabbing Devon by the elbow and pulling him aside. Devon yanked his arm free. "You told me to lie!" "I didn't." Walt's face darkened. "You're done here. Don't bother coming back tomorrow." Devon stared at him, heart pounding. He should have felt defeated, but all he felt was clarity. He walked past Walt without another word. He wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Devon didn't go home after Walt fired him. Instead, he drove straight to the small public library on Cedar Street. The air inside smelled like old paper and lemon-scented cleaner. The librarian, Miss Clara, looked up from her desk, squinting through her glasses. "Devon Scott," she said with a slow smile. "I haven't seen you in a while." He nodded, a little out of breath from moving too fast. "I need to see the old property ledgers again, the ones from Magnolia Grove." She tilted her head. "Trouble at work?" Devon let out a humorless breath. "You could say that." Clara pushed back from her desk and motioned for him to follow. "Come on, then. You know where they are." The back room smelled even more like time itself. Dust and mildew and something Devon could never quite describe. He ran his hand along the spines of the record books until he found the one marked 1831 to 1850, Magnolia Grove Holdings. He pulled it down and set it on the table, flipping carefully through the fragile pages. There they were. Names. Not many, but enough to feel like voices whispering from the paper. Sarah, age 28, field laborer. Samuel, age 32, blacksmith. Little Henry, age 8, stable boy. Next to the names, prices. Next to the prices, buyer names. Whole families split across lines like items in a grocery list. Devon kept reading until the page blurred in front of him. He rubbed his eyes and turned the page again, and there it was. Rachel Scott, age 17, housemaid, sold to J.H. Rutledge. His chest tightened. Scott. He read it again to be sure. Rachel Scott. His hands trembled as he ran his fingers over a faded ink. "My God," he whispered. Clara leaned in the doorway, watching him. "You find something?" Devon swallowed hard. "I found me family." That night, he sat in his tiny kitchen, staring at the copy he had made of the page. He remembered his grandmother's voice. "That land ain't nothing but bones and blood." He had never asked what she meant, never thought to ask. Now he knew. His blood had built that house. His family had stood on that block. This wasn't just history anymore. It was personal. By morning, Devon had made up his mind. He wasn't going to let Magnolia Grove hide these stories. He wasn't going to let Walt Freeman silence them again. He called Miss Clara back and asked her to pull every document she had. Then he started writing his own tour script. Not the one Walt wanted. Not the one the donors paid for. The real one. 2 days later, Devon returned to the plantation. He wasn't on the payroll anymore, but that didn't stop him. He stood by the gate as tourists arrived, holding up a hand-painted sign. Ask me about the real history. At first, people ignored him. They walked past with their maps and their cameras, smiling for photos in front of the house. But by noon, one woman approached, then a man, then a small group. "Are you the guy who used to give tours here?" someone asked. "Yeah," Devon replied. "I still do, but I don't charge ye for lies." He led them not to the porch, but straight to the auction block. No microphone, no permission, just his voice, steady and clear. He told them about Rachel Scott. He told them about the names in the ledgers. He told them about his own bloodline, tied forever to this ground. Word spread fast. By the next weekend, more people were gathering outside the gates, asking for Devon's tour. Some even skipped the official ones altogether. Walt wasn't happy. He stormed out one afternoon, pointing a finger at Devon. "You're trespassing." Devon stood his ground. "Public road." Walt's face turned red. "I'll call the cops." Devon nodded. "Go ahead. They'll have to arrest me on my family's land." Walt froze for just a second, like the words had slapped him. Devon didn't wait for a response. He turned back to his growing crowd. "Let me tell ye about the Scott family," he began again. And this time, more people listened. The next Saturday started with heavy air and low clouds, the kind of Louisiana morning that made everything feel slower, heavier. But the weight Devon carried had nothing to do with the weather. By noon, his unauthorized crowd had doubled again. He stood beneath the oak tree, pointing to the auction block. He spoke louder now, not just for the people in front of him, but for those peeking over from the official tour group by the house. "Ye see that stone? They used to put chains right through the holes on the side. You won't hear about that on the brochure." Some visitors from the official group wandered closer. A few broke away entirely, joining Devon's gathering. Walt noticed. By the time Devon finished, Walt was waiting by his car, arms crossed, with someone Devon had never seen before, a woman in a sharp navy pantsuit and mirrored sunglasses. "Mr. Scott," she called out before he could reach his door. Devon stopped, squinting at her. "Who are ye?" She handed him a business card. "Dr. Angela Fields, American History Department, University of New Orleans." She removed her sunglasses, revealing sharp, steady eyes. "I heard about your tours," she said. "I came to see for myself." Walt shifted uncomfortably. "Dr. Fields be consulting with our board. She's here to help us refine our messaging." Devon raised an eyebrow. "Messaging or cover-up?" Angela smiled slightly. "That depends on who's doing the talking." Walt tried to interrupt, but Angela held up a hand. "Mr. Scott, would you mind walking with me for a moment?" They moved toward the old carriage house, out of earshot. "I've read your work," Angela said. "You're not wrong, not one bit. But you're playing a dangerous game. They fired me. What else can they do?" Angela studied him for a moment. "Plenty," Devon sighed. "So what's your role in all this? You here to keep the donors happy?" Angela crossed her arms. "Let's just say the board brought me in to clean up the narrative. But cleaning up doesn't mean whitewashing. Not on my watch." Devon narrowed his eyes. So you agree with me? Angela leaned in. I agree the truth matters. But if you keep pushing like this, they'll get a restraining order, or worse, and then no one hears your story. Devon glanced toward the growing group at the gates. So what do I do? Walk away? Angela shook her head. No, but you need allies. You need people who can stand with you when they try to shut you down. She handed him her card again. Call me. You're not alone in this. By the time Devon got home, his phone was already buzzing with texts and notifications. Someone had posted a video of his latest tour on social media. By morning, it had 10,000 views and counting. He clicked on the comments, scrolling through reactions. This is the tour we should have gotten. How is this man not working for the museum? I'm donating to support this truth. But there were other comments too. Another race baiter trying to ruin Southern heritage. If you don't like the South, leave! Fake history from a fake guide. Devon closed the app, leaning back in his chair. His heart raced, not from fear, but from knowing the fight had already gone public. He picked up Dr. Fields' card. He dialed her number. Dr. Fields. Angela, it's Devon Scott. There was a pause, then her voice softened. I was hoping you'd call. I'm not sure what I'm doing, Devon admitted, but I know I can't stop. Angela let out a short breath. Good, because you just became bigger than Magnolia Grove. Devon rubbed his face. What do I do next? Angela's voice was calm but firm. You get ready. The real fight hasn't even started. By Monday, Devon's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls from strangers, emails from journalists, messages from teachers, pastors, students, all asking the same thing. Can we hear your tour? Can we help ye tell the truth? Can you speak at our school? Angela had been right. The video had cracked something open, but so had Walt. That afternoon, Devon parked 2 blocks away from Magnolia Grove, careful not to draw more attention than necessary. Angela met him at the old church nearby. They sat on the back pew, both of 'em looking toward the stained glass windows, but not really seeing 'em. They're moving to shut you down, Angela said quietly. Walt wants to frame you as a liar, a troublemaker. They're calling donors, spinning the story. Devon leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. How do you know? I was in the room when they drafted the talking points. Devon turned to her, surprised. Angela nodded. I told 'em not to go down that road, but they didn't listen. They think this'll all blow over if they discredit you fast enough. So that's it. They bury the truth again? Angela shook her head. Not if you stay ahead of 'em. Not if you keep speaking before they shut the door. Devon glanced around the empty church. Angela, they're gonna paint me as some angry black man trying to ruin their pretty story. Angela leaned in. So let them. But make sure your voice is louder. She handed him a small recorder. Start recording your tours. Build a record. Make it undeniable. Devon swallowed hard. And when they try to arrest me? Angela smiled. Make sure someone's filming. That night, Devon drove home and found 2 police cruisers parked on his street. For a second, his stomach dropped, but they weren't there for him. Just a traffic stop, a neighbor's busted taillight. Still, the fear sat in his chest long after the sirens faded. He didn't sleep much. Every noise outside felt louder. Every shadow felt closer. But morning came anyway, and with it, more people waiting at the gates. He started recording that day. He clipped the recorder to his belt, just like Angela said. As the group gathered, he noticed new faces among them. Local teachers. A woman wearing a shirt that read, Justice for the Ancestors. even a man holding a notebook who introduced himself as a writer from a small black newspaper in New Orleans. Devon nodded to them all, and he began again. This time, he told them about the labor strikes after emancipation, about how freed people were forced into sharecropping, trapped by debt and violence, about the convict leasing that followed, where black men were arrested on petty charges and forced back into labor camps. He told them about the legacy of voter suppression, redlining, mass incarceration. He drew a straight line from the auction block to today. And when he finished, the crowd didn't move. They stood in silence, heads bowed, some holding hands. Someone started humming "We Shall Overcome." And for the first time, Devon didn't feel like he was standing alone. Afterward, a woman from the official tour staff approached him, her face pale, her voice shaking. "Devon," she whispered, "Walt's planning to call the police tomorrow. He said you're trespassing and disturbing the peace." Devon nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." She glanced over her shoulder, her voice dropping lower. "Be careful. Some of them, they don't just want you fired." Devon felt the weight of her words long after she walked away. That night, as he sat on his porch listening to the night sounds of Louisiana, he knew something had changed. The whispers had grown louder, but so had the truth. And tomorrow, Devon promised himself they were going to hear all of it. Devon woke before dawn, knowing what he had to do next. He drove 30 miles down winding country roads, past sugarcane fields and weathered shotgun houses, until he reached a small church cemetery bordered by rusted iron fencing. He parked and walked slowly between the crooked headstones until he found her name, Ethel May Scott, his grandmother. He stood there in the dim light, hands in his pockets, searching for the words. "You were right," he whispered. "It's blood. It's ours." He pulled the copy of the ledger page from his jacket pocket and read the name aloud. "Rachel Scott, 17, housemaid, sold right there on that block." He knelt down, pressing his hand to the cool stone. "I won't let 'em erase us. Not again." The wind stirred the trees overhead, as if they had heard him. On the way back, Devon stopped at the parish courthouse. He spent hours digging through birth records, death certificates, and property transfers. The further he looked, the clearer the picture became. Rachel Scott had children. Their children had children. And their descendants had stayed, generation after generation, in the very parish where they had once been owned. His family. The paper trail ended with his grandmother. But the story was undeniable now. Devon wasn't just fighting for strangers in dusty books. He was fighting for his own name. That afternoon, he returned to Magnolia Grove and found the biggest crowd yet waiting by the gate. At least 50 people. Angela was there, along with the journalist from New Orleans, several teachers, and a local pastor. Even some of the official tour staff stood nearby, nervous but curious. Devon stood on the roadside, looking at the faces gathered before him. He raised his voice, stronger than ever. "I need ye all to hear something today." He pulled the ledger copy from his bag, holding it high. "I found the record. My family, Rachel Scott, 17 years old, sold right here on that stone." The crowd leaned in. "She's my great-great-grandmother. My blood built that house. My family's pain made that wealth. This isn't just history. This is personal." A murmur spread through the crowd. Angela stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's all of us now," she said loudly. "This story belongs to all of us." Suddenly, sirens echoed down the road. 2 police cruisers pulled up fast, lights flashing. Walt climbed out of his truck, pointing toward Devon. "That's him! He's trespassing, disrupting business." Devon felt his heart pound, but he didn't move. Angela stepped between him and the officers. "He's on public land. You have no grounds to remove him." Walt stormed toward them. "He's disturbing the peace." A voice from the crowd shouted back, "The truth is the peace you've been disturbing for generations." Others began to speak up, their voices building into a wave of protest. "We stand with Devon. Let him speak. Tell the real story." The officers hesitated, glancing at the growing crowd, then at each other. One of them stepped forward, lowering his voice. "You got a permit for this?" Angela held up a folder. "We applied this morning. Filed and stamped by the parish clerk." Walt's face twisted in frustration. "Ye can't let him do this!" The officer shook his head. "It's legal. You can take it up with the courthouse if you want." Walt cursed under his breath and turned back toward his truck. The officers got back in their cruisers and pulled away slowly. Devon stood in the center of the crowd, heart racing, eyes burning. Angela leaned in again, her voice steady. "You just won your first round." That night, as they gathered in the parking lot of the old church to debrief, Angela pulled Devon aside. "They'll come harder next time. Ye need more than just a voice now. Ye need a platform." Devon nodded. "We build one from the ground up." Angela smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping ye'd say." The morning sky hung low and gray, like it knew what was coming. Devon stood in front of his bathroom mirror, buttoning the same plain black shirt he wore on every tour now. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of what they had planned. Today wasn't just another gathering. Today was the day Devon had chosen to take his stand in front of the cameras. Angela had spent the week pulling every string she had. Journalists from major outlets were coming. Bloggers, podcasters, even a local news crew. It wasn't just word of mouth anymore. It was going to live stream. Devon knew the risk. Once the footage hit the internet, he wouldn't just be that troublemaker outside the gates. He would be national news. Walt would come for him harder than ever. But Devon didn't care. The truth had waited long enough. By noon, more than 100 people stood outside Magnolia Grove. Some held signs. Others wore shirts that read, "The auction block still stands." Angela stood beside Devon, scrolling through her phone. "They're live. Thousands are watching already." Devon exhaled slowly. The official tour was gathering on the porch. Walt stood at the top step in a crisp white shirt and khaki pants, smiling and shaking hands with a group of wealthy donors. Devon recognized them from the Plantation's website, the foundation sponsors, the Friends of Magnolia Grove. Cameras surrounded them. Reporters captured their staged, sanitized tour. Angela leaned in. "Ye ready?" Devon nodded. He stepped forward, raising his voice so the cameras would hear. "I have a story to tell." Heads turned. Some visitors paused mid-step. The live cameras shifted toward him. Walt stiffened on the porch. Devon kept going. "This house stands on stolen labor. This land was built with black blood. That stone under that oak tree was used to sell human beings." The donors stopped smiling. Some turned away, pulling out phones, looking uncomfortable. Devon took a step closer. "That story isn't in your brochures. It's not on your website, but it's the truth. And it's time to tell it." Walt descended the steps fast, grabbing a security guard on the way. Angela stepped between Devon and the guard, holding up her phone, still recording. You really want to drag a black man off his family's land on camera? She asked loudly. The guard hesitated. The cameras closed in. Devon turned back to the crowd. My name is Devon Scott. My great-great-grandmother, Rachel Scott, was sold right here, on that block. My family built this place, and we were written out of its story. He raised his voice higher. We are writing ourselves back in. The crowd erupted in applause, cheers echoing across the lawn. Walt shouted over them, his face red. You're a liar! None of that's verified! You have no proof! Angela lifted a folder. We have the ledgers, the court records, the names. She turned to the cameras. And now the world does too. The donors looked lost, trapped between their PR smiles and the rising tension. One older man stepped forward, addressing Walt, loud enough for everyone to hear. Why weren't we told this? Why is this the first we're hearing of it? Walt stammered, caught between the cameras and the truth. Devon pressed his advantage. Because they sold ye a myth, and I'm here to tell ye the truth. The crowd pressed closer. The chants started again. Tell the real story! Tell the real story! Cameras panned across the scene. The live chat on Angela's phone exploded with thousands of comments. Walt pointed at Devon again. Get off this property, now! Devon stepped toward the porch, voice like iron. Make me! Walt flinched, looking toward the guards, but they stood frozen. No one wanted to be the one on camera dragging Devon off the land. Angela whispered, You just won the moment. Devon knew it wasn't over, but today he had planted a flag right in the heart of their lie. And the world had seen it. The footage was everywhere by morning. Clips of Devon standing in front of Magnolia Grove had gone viral across every major platform. The words "we are writing ourselves back in" were quoted, reposted, turned into graphics and hashtags. Hashtag the real story. Auction block still stands. Justice for Rachel Scott. News anchors debated whether Devon had gone too far. Talk radio hosts mocked him. Activists praised him. Comment sections split down the middle. And Walt went on offense. A press release from Magnolia Grove Plantation hit the media less than 24 hours after the protest. Magnolia Grove stands by its mission to educate the public on the rich cultural heritage of the South. While we respect differing interpretations of history, we reject misinformation and unauthorized disruptions that misrepresent our work. Walt appeared on a local morning show, shaking his head, looking disappointed. Devon Scott is not a historian. He's not an employee. What he's spreading is personal speculation, not verified fact. Magnolia Grove is committed to preserving history with dignity and accuracy. They called him a fraud, a liar, a radical troublemaker. Angela threw her phone down on the table in frustration. Cowards, all of them. Devon stared at the screen in silence, feeling the walls close in. The reporters stopped calling. The threats started flooding his inbox. Phone calls with no names, blocked numbers. Go back to where you came from. Leave our heritage alone. We know where you live. Devon changed his number by the end of the week. But not all the calls were threats. A message from a professor at Howard University. A DM from a journalist at The Guardian. An invitation to speak at the Louisiana Historical Society. Angela was right again. Ye just became too loud to erase. They met at the church basement that Saturday. More supporters than ever before crowded the folding chairs. Students, elders, local pastors, even former Magnolia Grove employees. Devon stood in front of them. overwhelmed by the faces staring back. "I don't know how this ends," he admitted, "but I know we can't go back." Angela stood and raised her voice. "Then we take the next step. We bring the truth to them. We make our own platform. We build something they can't control." A teacher from Baton Rouge stood. "We have classrooms. Let us bring your tour to the students." A pastor raised his hand. "Bring it to the churches." A young woman called out, "Bring it to the streets." And so they did. Within days, Devon's Truth Tour had expanded beyond the gates of Magnolia Grove. Community centers, high school gyms, city parks. He printed flyers, posted the videos himself, started a podcast with Angela. He told the story over and over again, and every time he told it, the crowd grew. Walt tried to discredit him at every turn, but the truth moved faster than Walt could stop it. Devon found himself standing on bigger stages, facing bigger cameras, speaking to bigger crowds. He was no longer just a fired tour guide. He had become a movement, and deep down, he knew exactly where they had to go next. They had to go back to the block. But this time, they wouldn't be silent. This time, they were bringing every voice they had gathered with them. The word spread faster than Devon expected. Sunday, noon, at the block. He didn't know who started the flyer. He didn't know who paid for the posters. But by the time he showed up at Magnolia Grove that Sunday morning, they were everywhere. Signs posted on light poles, church doors, grocery store windows. The same phrase printed on every one. The auction block still stands. The truth still matters. He half expected to see police barricades. Instead, he saw people. Hundreds of them. Angela stood near the front, holding a megaphone. Behind her, teachers, pastors, artists, students. Some held signs with Rachel Scott's name. Others held photos of their own enslaved ancestors. When Devon stepped forward, the crowd parted. He looked around, stunned by the sheer size of what they had become. Angela handed him the megaphone. "It's your block," she whispered. "It's your story. Take it." Devon swallowed hard, then lifted the megaphone to his mouth. "My name is Devon Scott." A hush fell over the crowd. My great-great-grandmother, Rachel Scott, was sold on that block. He pointed toward the stone beneath the oak tree, now surrounded by people instead of silence. This land carries blood and memory, and we're here to honor both. The chants began slowly, rising like a wave. "Tell the truth! Tell the truth!" Cameras rolled, drones circled overhead. Reporters wove through the crowd, broadcasting the moment live. Walt appeared at the top of the steps again, flanked by a few security guards. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He raised a bullhorn, trying to shout over the crowd. "This is private property. You are trespassing." But the chants only grew louder. "Tell the truth! Tell the truth!" Angela grabbed Devon's arm. "Stay calm. Don't move. Let the cameras do the work." Walt stormed down the steps, shoving his way toward Devon. "You're done. You hear me? Done." Devon held his ground, lowering the megaphone just enough to look Walt in the eye. "I was done the day ye sold me family's story for donor money." Walt's face twisted. "Get off this property, or I'll have ye arrested." Angela stepped between them, holding up a court-stamped permit. "Ye tried that already. We have the right to assemble." The crowd roared louder. The people have the right! The people have the right! Walt looked around, realizing no one was backing him. Even some of his own staff stood frozen, unsure who they were supposed to protect. Devon lifted the megaphone again. We stand here today because this land holds stories that deserve to be heard, not hidden. He turned toward the oak tree, toward the stone that had witnessed centuries of silence. He knelt down, placed his hand on the block, and spoke loud enough for every camera to catch it. We remember you. We honor you. We will not let them erase you again. The crowd fell silent. For a moment, the air felt thick with something heavier than anger, something like grief, something like healing. Angela placed her hand on Devon's back. Ye brought him back to life, she whispered. Devon stood slowly, turning to the crowd one last time. We are done yet, not by a long shot. The crowd answered with a single unified chant. Never again! Never again! 1 month later, the gates of Magnolia Grove remained closed. Walt Freeman had resigned for personal reasons. The Plantation's board announced it was temporarily suspending all tours for restructuring. But Devon knew the truth. They were afraid. Afraid of the voices that had risen. Afraid of the cameras that had stayed. Afraid of the history that refused to stay buried. The old oak tree still stood silent and watching, and the block beneath it had not been touched. Devon stood there again, but this time not alone. Angela stood beside him. The teachers, the pastors, the students, the descendants. Hundreds of people filled the grounds, not as tourists, but as witnesses. Devon took a deep breath and raised his voice, without a microphone, without cameras. We gathered here to remember, but remembering is just the first step. The crowd leaned in. We build from here. We teach from here. We tell our own stories from here. Angela stepped forward, holding a banner. The Truth Tour, a movement for memory. Devon nodded, his voice firm. Starting today, we take this story beyond these gates, to schools, to cities, to every place that tried to sell a lie. The crowd erupted in applause, not the kind of clapping ye hear at concerts or rallies, but the kind that feels earned, like something sacred being released. A local historian approached, offering Devon an old ledger book she had found in her archives. More names, she whispered, more stories. Devon held the fragile pages like they were holy. Angela whispered in his ear, It's bigger than Magnolia Grove now. Devon smiled. It always was. In the months that followed, the Truth Tour spread to cities across Louisiana. Community centers, libraries, churches, and schools opened their doors. People who had never stepped foot on a plantation finally heard the real stories, and the auction block became more than a stone under a tree. It became a symbol, a starting point, a monument to memory over money. 1 year later, Devon returned to Magnolia Grove. The gates had reopened, but something was different. A new sign stood near the entrance, the Magnolia Grove Center for Truth and Reconciliation. He walked to the oak tree, where a small plaque had been installed beside the block. In memory of those who were sold here, may their names and stories never be forgotten. Devon stood for a long time, his hand resting on the stone. He closed his eyes and whispered the name that started it all, Rachel Scott. Then he turned toward the future.